Let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really incredible, honestly terrifying narrative prompt. It's originally titled in Hindi, Shaitani Jungle Ka Raaz, which perfectly translates to The Secret of the Demonic Forest. You know, what we've got here is just an absolute masterclass in structuring an 8 to 9 minute supernatural horror and mystery story. We're going to look at exactly how this narrative builds suspense, creates this totally suffocating atmosphere, and basically manipulates our expectations from the very first frame all the way to that final chilling fade to black. So, if you've ever wondered what makes a scary story actually work on screen, instead of just relying on cheap jump scares, well, you are definitely in the right place. So, we kick things off by dropping right into the middle of a suspenseful mystery. Just ask yourself, what actually happens when you wander into an old, totally desolate forest at night? This story immediately taps into a super primal human fear. You know the one, the fear of the unknown, the pitch dark, the feeling of being completely isolated. Our prompt begins right in the thick of it. No long, boring build-up in a safe, cozy living room, just boom, we are instantly in the woods. It's a fantastic storytelling trick, honestly, because it hijacks your attention from literally second one. And notice how fast it establishes this highly specific 4K horror aesthetic. We aren't just getting some generic, spooky forest. No, we get faint moonlight piercing through the trees, throwing down these deep, super realistic, highly contrasted shadows. But here's the real kicker. The prompt leans heavily on a deep, dead silence. In cinematic horror, silence, it's often way louder than a monster roaring. It builds this immediate, suffocating tension. It leaves you right on the edge of your seat, literally just waiting for that absolute silence to break. Now, to make this work, you need the right characters, right? And this story sets up its core character dynamic perfectly. In any good horror narrative, you absolutely need characters who react totally differently to pressure. On one hand, we've got Amon. He's brave, sure, but he's driven by that incredibly dangerous curiosity. The kind that makes you scream at the screen, do not go in there. And contrasted right against him is Neha. She's sensible, she's grounded, but she is utterly terrified of the dark and strange sounds. She basically represents us, right? The audience's very rational fear. This constant push and pull between wanting to investigate and wanting to run for the hills, that is exactly what keeps us glued to the story. Okay, remember that suffocating dead silence we just talked about? Well, this is where things really kick into gear. Out of nowhere, that eerie quiet is shattered by a strange woman's laugh, just echoing from a distance. Talk about the ultimate auditory hook. It completely shatters the tension we were sitting in and forces a terrifying question. Who else is out here? And of course, thanks to Amon's fatal curiosity, that sound acts like a giant magnet. It pulls our contrasting protagonists and, well, us along with them, deeper into the dangerous unknown. So, following that deeply unsettling laugh, Amon and Neha stumble upon a ruined mansion completely hidden within the trees. And wow, the environment here just comes alive with these highly effective classic horror tropes. We're talking thick, undisturbed dust, huge spiderwebs, and these ancient, incredibly eerie paintings just staring down at them from the walls. This kind of environmental storytelling, it's doing a ton of heavy lifting. It immediately signals that this place is been abandoned by the living for a very, very long time, which perfectly sets the creepy stage for the lore drop that's about to happen. And that brings us to a really crucial threshold. Amon, naturally driven by that trademark urge to touch things he really shouldn't, finds an old, dusty diary in one of the rooms. He opens it up and reads this chilling line. A demonic spirit has been wandering this forest for years. Boom! There is your quintessential lore dump. It instantly confirms all of Neha's worst fears and gives this terrifying concrete context to the laugh they heard earlier. It decisively shifts the whole story from just a creepy situation into a confirmed, undeniably supernatural threat. Now, let's talk about the pacing here, because it is absolutely phenomenal. The exact moment Amon finishes reading that diary entry, the trap springs. Think about how fast this narrative escalates. One second, he's reading the words, and the very next second, the mansion doors violently slam shut, completely on their own, trapping them inside. Then these creepy, strange whispers start echoing from literally every single direction. And right after that, dark shadows actually begin moving across the walls. The pacing accelerates instantly. We go from this slow, creeping dread straight into a rapid-fire sequence of terrifying supernatural events. This right here is the absolute climax of the mansion scene. Imagine the dramatic camera angles and those creepy ambient sounds totally peaking right at this moment. The story deliberately focuses on capturing the realistic facial expressions of pure, unadulterated terror on Amon and Neha's faces. It's that horrifying, dawning realization hitting them all at once. They aren't just lost anymore. They are not alone, and they are actively being hunted by whatever entity was described in that old diary. So, obviously, they do what any sensible person would try to do. They run. But escaping is never that easy, is it? They manage to panic and kind of force their way out of the haunted mansion, sprinting totally blindly back into the dark forest. But here is the genius twist of this narrative prompt. The forest itself becomes an active antagonist. They quickly discover that the paths are constantly changing. The woods have literally become this impossible shifting labyrinth, trapping them in a loop and forcing them to face new, terrifying supernatural events at every single turn. But throughout this frantic, desperate escape, the narrative isn't just throwing cheap jump scares at us. It's actually deeply focused on the characters. The heavy suspense and that high-quality, moody lighting, it's all designed to highlight how their bond is being pushed to the absolute limit. Amon has to step up and use his courage to physically protect them, while Neha has to push through her own paralyzing psychological fear of the dark just to survive. It turns into this brutal, exhausting test of their friendship and their mental endurance against some seriously overwhelming supernatural odds. And then, just as you think they literally cannot take another second of this nightmare, there's a major shift. Morning arrives. Amon and Neha finally step out of the dense tree line as the first light of dawn breaks. Phew, right? It's this classic moment of relief. It makes us, and obviously the characters, take a massive deep breath and genuinely believe that the nightmare is finally over. The long, terrifying night has ended. The story dictates a profound shift in tone right here. That eerie, tense background music fades away entirely as our heroes basically collapse, finally catching their breath in the warm morning light. Survival seems completely assured at this point. And honestly, this is a brilliant structural technique. You lower the audience's heart rate, you make them feel incredibly safe, you give them this beautiful, deceptive dawn, all to perfectly set up the ultimate false sense of security. Because come on, this explainer wouldn't be complete without looking at the final cinematic twist. Think about how this would be directed. The camera slowly pulls away from a super relieved Amon and Neha, moving back into the dark trees. And right there, standing quietly in the lingering shadows of the forest, a mysterious demonic figure is revealed, just watching them. And then the screen slowly, agonizingly fades to pitch black, and we hear one final, terrifying echo of that same woman's laugh. It proves that, sure, they survived the night, but they definitely haven't escaped the entity. Which leaves us with this incredible, chilling conclusion. By perfectly combining sensory details, stark character contrasts, relentless pacing, and that classic false security twist, this narrative executes the mechanics of a cinematic horror experience flawlessly. It's just a brilliant example of how to build dread and keep the audience hooked long after the screen goes black. So I want you to think about that the next time you find yourself staring out at a dark line of trees at night. Will the secret of the demonic forest ever truly let anyone go?